When I inherited the old mansion from my great-aunt, I was both excited and apprehensive. The house was a beautiful relic of the past, filled with antique furniture and intricate architecture. But there was one peculiar detail, a room on the second floor that was always locked. The first few days, I explored every nook and cranny of the mansion, marveling at its grandeur. The locked room intrigued me, but I didn't have the key. My great-aunt's lawyer had mentioned it in passing, saying it had been locked for decades and no one had ever entered it since her husband's mysterious disappearance. One evening, while rummaging through an old chest in the attic, I found an ornate brass key. It was heavy and old, with a tag attached that simply read, "The Room." My heart raced with anticipation and a hint of fear as I made my way to the second floor. Standing in front of the door, I hesitated, key in hand. Taking a deep breath, I inserted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, and with a soft click, the door creaked open. A musty, stale air wafted out, and I stepped inside, flashlight in hand. The room was frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture, a large canopy bed, and an old dresser filled the space. What caught my eye immediately was a large, full-length mirror in the corner, draped with a white sheet. I approached it, heart pounding, and slowly pulled the sheet away. As the sheet fell to the floor, I was startled to see my own reflection staring back at me. But something was off. The reflection was slightly delayed, almost as if I were looking at a live video feed rather than a mirror. I waved my hand, and a second later, my reflection mimicked the action. Confused, I continued to explore the room. There were old photographs on the dresser, pictures of my great-aunt and her husband, smiling and happy. The last photo was different. It was taken in this very room, but my great-aunt's husband had a fearful expression, and behind him in the mirror was a shadowy figure. A sudden chill ran down my spine. I turned back to the mirror, and this time, the reflection was not my own. It was my great-uncle, staring back at me with pleading eyes. His mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. Panicking, I backed away, but the reflection stayed the same. I ran out of the room, slamming the door behind me. My mind raced with what I had seen. Determined to understand, I researched my great-uncle's disappearance. According to old newspaper articles, he had vanished without a trace. My great-aunt had been the prime suspect, but there was no evidence, and the case went cold. Unable to ignore the mystery, I returned to the room the next day. This time, I was prepared. I brought a notebook and a pen, determined to communicate with the spirit trapped in the mirror. As I stood before it, my great-uncle's reflection appeared once more. "Who are you?" I wrote in the notebook and held it up. His reflection showed him nodding, then mouthing, "Help me." "How?" I wrote. He pointed to the dresser. I opened it and found an old leather-bound journal. Inside were my great-aunt's entries, detailing her growing fear and paranoia. She believed her husband had discovered something in the house, something that drove him mad. Her last entry mentioned locking him in the room to protect herself. Heart pounding, I looked back at the mirror. My great-uncle's reflection was clearer now, more desperate. He mouthed, "Free me." I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to try something. I placed the journal back in the dresser and said aloud, "I'll find a way to free you." Days turned into weeks as I searched for answers. I found an old diary of my great-aunt hidden in the attic, which revealed the full extent of her fear. She believed the mirror was cursed, a portal to another realm that had trapped her husband. Desperate, I contacted a paranormal expert. He arrived with equipment and immediately sensed the dark presence in the room. As he performed a cleansing ritual, the air grew colder and the mirror began to vibrate. My great-uncle's reflection appeared once more vivid and real than ever. The expert chanted in a language I didn't understand, and suddenly the mirror shattered, sending shards of glass flying. When the dust settled, the room felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. In the debris, I found a small, hidden compartment in the dresser. Inside was a locket with my great-uncle's picture and a note, "Forgive me." The hauntings stopped, and the room no longer felt oppressive. I knew my great-uncle's spirit was finally at peace. The mansion felt warmer, more inviting, as if a dark chapter had finally closed. And every time I passed by the once locked room, I felt a sense of calm, knowing that the mystery had been resolved and the spirit had been freed.